With Donald Trump taking a pass on the first Republican debate for the 2024 presidential race, the spotlight was shared between the other 8 candidates that took the stage. There's a lot of ways to break down this debate, but today, we're going to take a look at each candidate's most notable moment and whether they came out as a winner or a loser. So let's dive in. Starting off with the funny-looking grandpa from Arkansas, Asa Hutchinson. Now, the guy didn't really have any breakout moments, aside from being the only person to not raise his hand when asked about whether or not he would support Trump as a candidate. And even though he's actually younger than Trump, he kind of gives off the energy of someone who's decaying. You know, his eyes look zombified, and many Americans are becoming less and less inclined to want to vote for someone who grew up when bread used to cost a nickel. Not to say that he bombed or said anything horrible, but he failed to deliver anything that would keep him in the conversation. Next up, we got our small-town sympathetic, Doug Burgum, whose name sounds like something you might say when you tear your Achilles. Doug Burgum. Anyway, Doug actually did tear his Achilles playing basketball the day before the debate, but was able to muster up that small-town grit to take the stage anyway. Did I mention that Doug is in fact from a small town? Because he certainly did multiple times.
You know, when I was building a company from scratch, with small town, I grew up in a small town. Of course, I'm from a town of 300 people. It's a big deal to make it on this stage with all these folks.
Doug's a sweet guy, and we like him, but not enough to stay relevant. Sorry, Doug.
Brett Baer, when he goes, let's address the elephant that's not in the room.
Everybody and he wasn't talking about Chris Christie, right?
And he wasn't talking about Chris Christie, who was right in front of him.
Who is the true elephant?
That's the real elephant.
So let's talk about the elephant that was in the room, Chris Christie. Most people would agree that if there was a clear loser, it was him.
Booing is allowed, but it doesn't change the truth. It doesn't change the truth.
Mr. Ramaswamy, you raised your hand supporting.
He came out of the gates not sounding too bad, but when the moderators hit him with this follow-up question about his not-so-impressive track record, it basically discredited anything else he said for the rest of the night.
When you were governor, had the second lowest credit rating in the nation after Illinois, and it was downgraded 11 times.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what happens when you inherit a blue state that has done that. But when you look at what we did on debt, Brett, in that state, we cut debt in that state, debt that had been left to us.
Generally speaking, one telltale sign that something's not going really well for you is if the entire crowd is passionately booing at you. All that being said, since he seems to have burned more calories during the debate than he has in the past year, he's going on our books as a winner, and we know Michelle Obama would be proud of him. Next up is Tim Scott, who came across as nothing more than a lukewarm, likable guy who is destined to be friend-zoned by America. He's a friendly, middle-of-the-road kind of guy that seems like he would genuinely try to lead the country to the best of his ability, as long as it's okay with everyone. While he's not necessarily hated by many, his charisma feels forced and scripted. But hey, even though none of your clips qualified as a highlight, we still love you, Tom. One of the most notable candidates of the debate was without a doubt Nikki Haley. Coming into the debate, she had very little press and wasn't really one of the names that was being seriously considered. However, she had several moments she was able to effectively capitalize on. She voiced a very clear and reasonable approach to the abortion issue, took her shot at Vivek for his inexperience in foreign policy, and pulled no punches in her criticism of both Democrats and Republicans being responsible for digging us deeper into the abyss that is the American debt.
And while they're all saying this, you have Ron DeSantis, you've got Tim Scott, you've got Mike Pence. They all voted to raise the debt, and Donald Trump added $8 trillion to our debt, and our kids are never going to forget.
Although she's unlikely to make enough progress to contend with some of her higher-ranking competition, she did have the highest percent increase in support coming out of the debate, and her campaign managers are definitely going to count that as a win. Former Vice President Mike Pence actually got a lot more speaking time than many people expected. It doesn't really seem like anyone is taking him that seriously, but there is something to be said about how much attention he was able to command when he spoke. However, he did go a little bit overboard with the interrupting and talking over people, definitely making him one of the more annoying candidates. Pence definitely took the opportunity to position himself as a political veteran with plenty of experience and used that to address the stark contrast between himself and Vivek Ramaswamy. Let's see how that went.
Now is not the time for on-the-job training. We don't need to bring in a rookie. We don't need to bring in people without experience.
All in all, Pence came out of the debate looking roughly the same as he did coming in. And unless you have a commanding lead, that's not going to be enough to get the job done. If there was one person that definitely couldn't afford to just blend in, it was Ron DeSanctimonious. Back in March, he was neck and neck with Donald Trump, and his position has dropped by over 50% since then. He knew tonight was important to stand out, which is why we assume he wore heels to make himself taller. Most people expected DeSantis to be the main target of criticism, so the biggest surprise of the night was the fact that hardly anyone even came after him. Instead, everyone had their sights on Vivek Ramaswamy. It's almost as if they already see him as a bigger threat. There were some attacks at Trump, but interestingly, none of them came from DeSantis. Instead, he kept relatively quiet about Trump, and he failed to have any real moments that made him more of a standout candidate. But it doesn't seem like it was from a lack of effort. Watch how DeSantis tries to take command of the stage when the question about climate change comes up.
Is causing climate change? Raise your hand if you do.
Look, we're not school children. Let's have the debate. I mean, I'm happy to take it to start. Alexander?
So do you want to raise your hand or not?
I don't think that's the way to do it.
It could have been a good highlight for him if he had actually answered the question.
Is that a yes? Or is that a yes? Is that a hand raise?
You do not.
I think it was a hand raise for him, and it's...
According to the Daily Mail, the Drudge Report, and Donald Trump himself, Vivek Ramaswamy was the clear winner of the debate. His relaxed confidence allowed him to effectively counter all of the attacks that came his way without coming across in a negative light.
We cannot set a precedent where the party in power uses police force to indict its political opponents. It is wrong. We have to end the weaponization.
As usual, he wasn't afraid to hold back on some of his bold statements.
I'm the only person on the stage who isn't bought and paid for, so I can say this. The climate change agenda is a hoax. The climate change agenda is a hoax. And we have...
The most viral part of the debate was when the moderators asked everyone to raise their hands if they would support Donald Trump even if he is convicted by a court of law. Take a look at how everyone else raises their hand after Vivek, and Ron DeSantis even looks around at everyone else and then halfway commits to a weak hand raise. While he did seem to get some pushback on some of the controversial statements he made, a common theme with Vivek is that he rarely says things without backing them up with facts. At the end of the day, this was just the first debate, and there are plenty of other things between now and the election that need to happen for a guy like Vivek to bridge the seemingly monumental gap of a lead that Donald Trump currently has. Let us know who you think won the debate in the comments section, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button for more updates on the 2024 presidential race.